Is on African Independent Television. Dr. Arome Salifu is an economist as well as a development consultant. He joins me from my far right. Welcome, Dr. Salifu.
Morning. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Jaye Gaskia is also a policy analyst. He is to my immediate right. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me at the table today. March 9 elections, yes, March 9, the governorship elections and the state assemblies elections. Is it Uhuru yet?
Not at all. From the report we are seeing, both from the side of INEC, the observers, and the citizens, we have lost yet another opportunity to set good example for other African countries to emulate in terms of organizing credible, transparent, and acceptable election. Of course, we know that we have many stakeholders, many actors in this process, but the most important thing in all of this is to guarantee the participation of the people, because democracy, as defined popularly, government of the people, by the people, and for the people. So the environment must be created above anything else for the people to participate freely in order to have ownership on the part of the people, so that the people can own the process and the outcome of that same process. But unfortunately, we have lost that chance, that opportunity, to ensure that the people own the government and the people could have the power to hold the government to account while in power. Because you cannot call to account what you are not part of the process. The militarization of the election is uncalled for. The use of brutal force in this election is uncalled for. That accounted for high level of voter apathy in most parts of the country. We must think of the country first, above partisan interests, above primordial interests, above sectional interests, above individual interests. These are serious worries for a lot of us, Nigerians, and even the international community. The UK yesterday issued a statement that Nigerian government must be careful on the way and manner they handle the elections, particularly in Rivers State. What we saw on the social media cannot be presented anywhere in the name of democracy. The situation in Rivers State, where armed military men could go into the kitchen of a politician in the name of participating in the election, that is not acceptable. Now, the military issued a statement yesterday that the so-called armed men or military men are not genuine military men. But this is the question. It will take the genuine military man to identify a fake military man. What has been done to that extent? Have they been able to apprehend the so-called fake military men? And I want to say this. The federal government, after the pronouncement of Mr. President, ordered for the release of armed military men in our elections by Mr. President. And at the end of it all, it is something we saw on the ground, that military men were everywhere during this election, both the presidential election and the governorship election. So you cannot tell me that we did not have military men on the street of Port Harcourt. And if at all we had military men on the street of Port Harcourt, what was done to apprehend the so-called fake military men that did what happened, on the 9th of March? What was the role of the genuine military men in that process?
Okay, let me bring in Mr. Gaskia now. Watching the scenario, because for me particularly, it's not just about the economy, because I know a lot of things add up. We can't have an economy if if our electoral process is flawed. We can't have an economy if our political system is not as effective. And people see it as transparent in terms of choosing their leaders. That means every other the foundation is flawed, as it were. So things like this, and you talked about for the UK to release a statement. In fact, what was also going through my mind all through this weekend, in fact, since I've been watching these elections, is that we should know that a lot of people are watching us. We are not just the largest economy. Now people are saying all over the world, oh, Nigeria is the poverty capital of the world. That is not a good tag. Then for us not to have an election, or people are feeling that our election is not as smooth or as transparent it should be, that doesn't send us good signals. If the UK can send that kind of statement, you can imagine if UK businessmen are coming, what the people here will be telling them. We're like, okay, why not just wait? Let's finish watching, or let's see how the government would administer. So there's a whole lot. In fact, when you're watching this thing, you should watch it closely beyond the immediate gains or beyond what is happening right now. What is your own assessment of this whole process?
Okay, I'm going to be, I will be a little bit historical in doing this because it is important and because it helps to actually substantiate the point that I want to make. I have no doubt in my mind, and these elections have confirmed it, that the biggest threat to our democracy and to our institutions, the political elites and the political parties. I have absolutely no doubt in my mind. What has happened since 23rd of February has confirmed it. And so what do I mean? And why have I reached that conclusion? In 2003, all of us would if we can remember and go back, the first elections
of the outcome, of course, between 2015 and 2019 is a far cry from the ideal. Now, I wouldn't want to ascribe the responsibility of the failure to one particular player. Just like you said, we have many stakeholders in this process. We have the political elites. They are the biggest problem. The desperation to get into that office. The definition to make it look as though do or die.
Now, the question is also who gives birth to the political elites? The political elites, are they not also from our system? Whether the system is also flawed or not, the political elites, we all know them. They are either your relatives or your friends or your brothers or your sisters. Yes. So what is giving birth, or what is giving more oxygen to the political elites? Good. Yes.
It's very simple.
By doing what they are still doing.
You see, politics in
I
this
will allow you answer that quickly. Yeah. Sorry, okay. Let's just quickly take this break. Okay. I'll be right back. Don't forget that you can also join this conversation. You can find and follow me on Twitter right now at Nancy. You can also find the show Moneyline AIT. Drop your comments and your questions. Tell us what your observations are concerning these elections. And just like you see right now on the screen, elections and the economy, I'm also wondering if we will still have a country called Nigeria. That should be the #1 thing on our minds, that there is a country called Nigeria, and that should be the #1 thing on all our minds as Nigerians. We'll be right back.
What is CBN about addressing the needs of those, the textile manufacturers that have lots of stock of their textiles? Like I said, we'll make it difficult for those things to come in. And don't ask me, don't worry, in our closed-door session, I will talk. We will deal with smuggling this time. And indeed, you know, Central Bank does not carry gun. We do not carry arms. We do not have lorries to be at the border post. But we know what we will do to make it difficult for those smugglers to bring those things into Nigeria. And we'll unfold those to you. So when we make life difficult, make it difficult for them to smuggle these items into the country, what does that do? It opens the market for you, so that those who would have gone to buy those smuggled or imported ones will be forced to come to you. That is one immediate, I will call, economic solution that I can see. And of course, I would expect that since the government itself has also signed an economic, executive order, that will now compel everybody to flow in your direction.
All right, welcome back. My guests are still here, Dr. Arome Salifu as well as Jaye. Gaskia. Dr. Salifu, you were actually speaking.
Yes. You see, like I was trying to point out, we have a system where the winner takes all, and that is not really helpful because the politicians know how much they are investing into the process. And they know that once they lose out, they are going to lose everything. They're going to lose the money they have spent or they have invested, so to speak. They're going to lose the followership and the support base because, you know, just like you said, the politicians, the political elites are product of the society. As we speak, if you don't have the money to maintain your political structure, you are going to be out of political relevance for that period of time. Because the people who only hold you relevant, I mean, they only respect you to the extent of the maintenance you're able to extend to them, or the kind of largesse you're able to extend to them. Because our people are so poor to a point where they literally feed from the hands of these politicians. Okay, they come begging for food, for every little thing you can think of from these politicians. So the politicians want to remain relevant, and the only way they could remain relevant is by winning at all costs. Then the second factor is the fact that we don't have proportional representation in our politics. So if you win, you take everything. If for example, you score 60% of the vote and the opponent scores 40%, there's no provision where you could even have, you know, understanding on power sharing. Our politicians have not come to that point where they could have that level of, you know, consensus at the point of victory to say, you know what, Mr. A, you have tried. And so because you have done this much, we could have this, you know, working, you know, for all of us. That is not in our political culture, and that is why there's desperation on the part of the political elites. Another thing that we have to look at is the fact that, you see, the usurping of the political of institutional powers by the political elites is becoming more apparent in our elections. I mean, what do I mean by this? You have the police, you have the soldiers, you have the military. Now, you have INEC that is supposed to be independent, and INEC that is supposed to give instruction to the, to the police and to the military as to where and when they need their support. But we equally have on the other side the executive that has the complete power and control on the police and the security and the army that gives, you know, authorization to the same to, in the name of participating in the election to maintain peace and order, becoming, you know, another huge liability on the process itself. Now, you now have a situation where if you are in power, you have access to the, you know, to the security structure that determine the outcome of our elections.
Now, the question you talked about earlier on when you started, you talked about Nigerians owning the process.
Yes.
And I think the fundamental thing about Nigerians owning the process is going out to vote.
Yes.
And making sure that their votes count. And Nigerians also feeling that I was part of those that chose either so-so person or so-so person. Even if I chose, for example, the president has been declared winner of the 2019 election. I was part of those that voted for the... Yes, I'm responsible. If I voted for other parties, I voted, but my good was not good enough. The best man won, as it were. Do you think that Nigerians think that they really own the process, despite democracy being a government of the people, for the people, and by the people, or whatever the definition is? Do you understand where I'm going?
Of course,
do you understand my question in the sense that Nigerians have gone out to vote, but there was voter apathy. But the question is, are Nigerians beating their chest and saying, this process, we owned the process, that democracy was at play, Mr. Gaskia?
That's the first thing is this: how did we get to this point as Nigerians? And I think for me it was a coping mechanism. Governance was failing, and it's not just under the civilians. Governance was failing. Political office holders were not responsible, and so Nigerians became distrustful of the political process. And then they started trusting their immediate environment. So ethnic associations, religious associations, neighborhood associations. Nigerians are more active in their neighborhood associations, in their ethnic associations, in their religious activities, in their market associations and the rest of that. They are more active in it than they are, with Nigeria. And I think that that's where the challenge is. It's that what was a coping mechanism is now becoming an obstacle to real progress. And the Nigerians really need to come out of it. And I do agree that voting is one of the core indicators of participation. But you see, the problem is this. Election is a process, and I keep saying it. So it's not the voting. The voting is just one of the steps, and then at the tail end of it. Between now and 2023, what are Nigerians going to be engaged in terms of ensuring that they can determine not only even the trajectory of this government, regardless of whether they voted for it or did not vote for it, and then also the outcome of 2023. Because those are the issues. We talk about apathy now. We talk about non-inclusiveness. Nigerians are not participating and the rest of that. And I've asked myself this question. If Nigerians are not organizing, look, these Scandinavian school children, German school children, are out of school, boycotting classes, protesting on environment, on climate change. In the US, we had the gun control something among students. They went out, they came out, they were organizing. That's
when
how,
they saw a lot of killings were going on.
That's how, if things affect you, you organize. And I think that for a very long time, Nigerians have not been organizing collectively along those lines. So let me give you 3 reforms that I think are necessary, but how I think we can achieve it by forcing the political class. The first is this. If we talk about inclusiveness, in this election, 82% of the registered voters are people under 50 years, 18 and 50 years and above. Okay? Doesn't it strike us as really amazing that the 2 candidates that Nigerians considered to be viable are in their 70s?
Why about 52%?
82% of the...
You are talking about 18 to... Yes.
And for us, so those are the candidates that we think are viable. Those are the parties that we think are viable. And then young persons, 35, and then students. If you look at them, they're about 52% of the registered voters. Women are about 49% of this thing. How many women have made it to the platform of the so-called major parties, to contest the election? And I've said this. I said, look, if we build a movement now, right now, the same way the Not Too Young to Run movement was built, if we build a movement now and we insist, for example, that that it should be part of our electoral laws and guidelines, that for INEC to accept any list as the final candidate list from any political party that is going to participate in an election, that you must have a 40 to 50 to 60 something. No gender should be less than 40%. No gender should be more than 60%. By INEC just performing that test.
People will straighten up? Is that what you're saying?
The political parties are going to be forced to ensure that women emerge. If you also say that young persons must be 35% of your candidate list, political parties are going to make sure, because they want to contest the elections. So, but you see, affirmative action. But you see, but that won't happen.
On the part of our electoral act.
But hold on. Not just the electoral. But look, INEC can make regulations. The use of the card reader. It's not part of our electoral act, but it is part of the INEC regulations. I do understand that eventually we have to amend the law, okay? You see, that eventually we have to amend the law, but you have to start from somewhere. Because if we don't do this, but you see, the political class will not do it, okay? INEC will not do it on its own, except people who feel impacted, organized to get it done. On security, we talk about election violence, election security, only months to the election. Only when the election is approached, that's when it becomes an issue for us. And I've said this, in 2018, the budget of the Defense Ministry and the budget of the Nigerian Army, for example, there was 75 billion there for what was called special operations. Those special operations are actually internal security duties where the military has been deployed in Nigeria, and they are in 34 states of the federation at the moment. Now, imagine if that 75 billion had gone to develop a special operations unit of the police.
Of the police.
For elections.
So, yes.
Now, the issue
why shouldn't the police have a division that is specifically dedicated to election? Because we know elections come every 4 years.
Now, the issue it would be, because in all these things that we're talking about, money is exchanging hands. Money is going up. Yes. Money is going up and down.
Yes.
And yet we are not asking the right questions. For those of us even asking the right questions, we are not being given answers. Or for those of us that are also asking the right questions, we are deemed as, we are not the enemies of the system.
Enemies of progress.
Of progress. Now, the other question would be, do you think that the current political architecture would deliver the much needed transformation that Nigeria seeks, or the much needed economic advancement? Because it's all about all these things, hula baloo or shenanigans Nigerians are involved in this last 2-3 weeks or 1 month called elections. It still boils down to that. At the end of the day, when President Buhari is being sworn in again, or he settles down again, the issue would be, or the grammar or the Turanchi will all be speaking, is how economically empowered am I? How much better is my life going to be, either as a lawyer, as a doctor? I heard, not even I heard, I was told by people in the profession, for example, the doctors that are going out of this country in droves in a week, every week. And yet, these are the kind of news that should give us sleepless nights. You go to our health facilities, they are shadows of themselves. You go to government hospitals. A relative of mine was sick over the weekend, 2 weeks ago. In fact, he went to one of the federal medical centers in the States, precisely in Delta State, let me put it that way. Doctors did not even attend to him. He went from the federal medical center to the private hospital, and the doctor that was called to attend to him was brought from that medical center.
Absolutely, yeah.
So you can imagine things like this are happening, yet we are believing that our political elites will bring us out and take us.
Those are the people.
Those are the things that concern the people. So the current political ecosystem, will they deliver the much needed economic advancement that we're looking for?
To be honest with you, Nancy, we need a lot of reforms. Reforms in the context of the system of government we practice. I think our government is becoming increasingly more expensive, to run and to manage. Parliamentary system of government is what is ideal for us. You could disagree. Yeah, of course, you could disagree with me, but we all know that a lot of people say we are rich. We are a very rich country, but the truth is we are not that rich. Because we need to ensure that we apply our resources in such a way
that... Or is it that we are rich and the resources are not wisely spent?
Yes, that is what we are saying.
Or allocated.
Yes, because, parliamentary system will allow you to get your ministers from the parliament. And you don't need to have so many ministers maintaining their own, system separately. Then you have the parliament, the members of the National Assembly members maintaining their own, system separately. You have like the UK system, where the Prime Minister is one of them, and she has to come and give accounts, on regular basis as to what is happening, in the government. That is one, aspect. The other aspect is that we actually need to reform, our political process, starting with the amendment of the Electoral Act. Mr. President, did not sign the amended version of the Electoral Act. But if that Electoral Act, had been in place, I want to believe that we would have gotten a different outcome from what we had in this election. For example, I understand that the time given to sign that Electoral Act was rather too close to election, but he had all the time before then to sign it. Like the issue of electronic voting, he said that even if we had electronic voting in place, politicians would have still been able to manipulate the process. But I want to say that let it be in place first. And then, because we should get to a point where Nigerians should vote from anywhere.
Because in fact, before the elections, the shows that I had before the election, I was saying, for example, the financial system is smart in the country. Though it's not where it should be, but the Nigerian financial systems, in terms of reforms, you're talking about BVN, in terms of electronic transactions and all of that, can the political system or the electoral process in fact, mirror what is happening in the financial system?
Let me just quickly correct a point. I did not say.
Okay.
I did not say that. In fact, what we need to do is to have electronic voting. Yeah. My point was that no matter what we do, if we do not change the political class, the political class will destroy it. Yes. I'm saying that as far as institutional reforms are, we are getting to the epitome of institutional reforms. What we really need to reform is this do or die attitude to something. I mean, look, let's be very clear about this particular election. Okay? Both leading parties had made up their minds, regardless of the outcome, that if they lost, the election was not fair. And if they won, then the election was fair. Both parties had made up their mind long before the election. And they had been preparing their candidates. So that even in some instances, like for example, a case like Oyo State or a case like Kano State, even in some of those instances, people will still not believe the outcome of the election. And then people will then use examples of outlandish places like Borno or like Rivers to now whitewash everything else that has happened. Because politicians have told their respective followers that, look, regardless of the outcome of this thing, that regardless of the use of the card reader, if politicians were saying before the election that the card reader, that people were collecting PVCs so that they will go and manipulate your PIN and then use it to vote. I mean, these are things that are not intelligible. But we have a citizenry that we have gotten to a situation where majority of Nigerians no longer, think about issues. They just accept things.
No, is it that they don't think, or they feel that even with after all the thoughts, just like some Nigerians are feeling, that's why perhaps it was one of the cases of voter, or one of the causes of voter apathy. Is it that Nigerians do not just think, or they think that at the end of the day, these politicians will just do what they want to do. They will be politicians. That brings me to the question.
Yes, but that's dangerous.
Yes. That also brings me to the question which you mentioned earlier, which you alluded to. Do you think that Nigerians right now are willing to disrupt the political status quo to have that desired transformation? Because before the elections, we saw the voters' registration data, and we're like 18 to 35, about 52%. These are category of Nigerians that can change the process, just like they did change it in 2015. And people felt that their voices were seemingly heard by bringing President Buhari in. The way President Buhari was even packaged as a detribalized Nigerian and all of that. Or every young person felt, oh, this was the man we needed at that time in 2015. But today, that feeling is not as much as it is there. So do you think that Nigerians are willing to disrupt the political status quo that we've seen? It's not even about party right now, because even the other parties that came.
All the parties are,
so very quickly before we go.
Yes, you see, to be honest with you, yes, Nigerians are ready. But they need to anchor on certain leadership. Because, you see, it's not easy for an individual to initiate this process. It will take certain level of organization, mobilization, particularly on the part of the civil society organizations. Okay, because more or less the civil society organizations are like the conscience of the people. Okay, so now that is on one side, but again, they must equally leverage on the space given to them by the government. Like you just mentioned the voter apathy and the reason for it. You come to vote, and after voting, you suddenly see some persons coming to cut away the ballot boxes. And then even after then, at the collation center, if they succeed in bringing the ballot boxes to the collation center, at the collation center, you see disruption at that point again. Then the entire effort comes to nullity.
Okay, so we just have to go. Mr. Gaskia, just give me your final thoughts very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, very quickly, I think that Nigerian citizens should, but it requires leadership. It requires a different type of, but then again, every Nigerian should consider themselves capable of becoming leaders. Because the challenge we have is that Nigerians have become used to being spoon-fed by their leaders. So and that's why political leaders have become godfathers. because they spoon feed
Instead
their
of
data.
servants,
Instead of
servants of the
exactly,
people.
and so they are not accountable to the people that they claim to be leading, and we need to change that. And I have no doubt in my mind that Nigerians can do this. But you know, one silver lining out of all of this crisis, because I've never seen this level. We've seen apathy, but I've also never seen this level of conversations around the election.
Okay,
I think we're on the right track.
I think let's just take, Director, just give me a few seconds. Let's take a few comments quickly. I know we've got to go. Oduwole says, Nancy, please, let's discuss economy and how to grow it and create jobs. We should not discuss politics.
Forget these politicians.
Your concern is how the teeming masses can leverage on opportunities in various sectors. My dear friend Oluwole, there should be a country before
the economy.
See what is happening in Venezuela right now and all of that. So we should be concerned about politics because politics and economy are Siamese twins, just as I say on the show. Edward says, I have decided I shall continue to ask why Nigeria should know there is no difference with the last 4 years and the next 4 years. Jeff says, dear Nancy, according to INEC, 84.2 million Nigerians registered to vote in 2019 elections. Only about 29 million people actually voted. That is where my concern is. That is why I'm also doing this show today, Oduwole, for your information. That so much money we earmarked to INEC to do this, the money may just go down the drain. A lot of ballot papers we've printed and a lot of things. Where's the money? These are the questions we should be asking. Those kind of money should do well for you and me if we know that there's only 29 million people that will come out to vote.
Why do we need?
Yes. So anyway, let's hold our brakes now because my director is just in my ear. Nancy, you've got to go. You've got to go. I'm going right now, but I'll see you all tomorrow, God willing. Same time on this channel. Thank you very much, Mr. Gaskia.
Thank you.